I want to welcome you guys once again. Today's passage or sermon title is called The Soils of Our Heart. And our passage is going to come from Matthew chapter 13, 1 through 9, and also 18 to 23. I'll read the word to you guys. Matthew chapter 13, 1 through 9, and also 18 to 23. The same day Jesus went out of the house and sat beside the sea, and great crowds gathered about him, so that he got into a boat and sat down. And the whole crowd stood on the beach, and he told them many things in parables, saying, A sower went out to sow, and as he sowed, some seeds fell along the path, and the birds came and devoured them. Other seeds fell on rocky ground, where they did not have much soil, and immediately they sprang up, since they had no depth of soil. But when the sun rose, they were scorched, and since they had no root, they withered away. Other seeds fell among thorns, and the thorns grew up and choked them. Other seeds fell on good soil and produced grain, some 100-fold, some 60, some 30. He who has ears, let him hear. Verse 18. Hear the parable of the sower. When anyone hears the word of the kingdom and does not understand it, the evil one comes and snatches away what has been sown in his heart. This is what was sown along the path. As for what was sown on rocky ground, this is the one who hears the word and immediately receives it with joy. Yet he has no root in himself, but endures for a little while. And when tribulation or persecution arises on the account of the word, immediately he falls away. As for what was sown among thorns, this is the one who hears the word, but the cares of the world and the deceitfulness of riches choke the word, and it proves unfaithful. As for what was sown on good soil, this is the one who hears the word and understands it. He indeed bears fruit and yields. In one case 100-fold, in another 60, in another 30. The word of the Lord. Let's pray. Dear God, I just thank you so much for gathering us here. I pray that you may open up our ears, may you open up our hearts, that we may be able to receive your words, O Lord, the seed in our lives, and may it grow fruit, and may you mold and shape us to the people you want us to be. Lord, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of all of our hearts be holy and pleasing to you. May your gospel be preached, and may your Holy Spirit work in our hearts. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. As I mentioned, we're starting in a new sermon series on the parables of Jesus Christ. These are time-tested old stories that connect to our life in real ways and teach us something. Jesus really is a master teacher. Someone that all preachers, I think, has to kind of look up to and learn from. He really doesn't just shove truth down your throat. He doesn't really yell at people. Sometimes he does, but most of the times he doesn't. But he speaks in a way that people can understand. He does it mainly using stories that kind of connect to life, things that we're all familiar with. What's the use of preaching when nobody understands? When I was in seminary, I used to read books about theology and about God, and literally my first year in seminary, I would have to Google search half the words that I was reading because I didn't understand what it was talking about. And over again, I look at it, I'm like, man, and after reading it multiple times and being in the academic world for a while now, I begin to realize that, man, some people just write books harder than it really has to be. Easy concepts, but made hard, I'll never forget my mother's advice to me when it comes to preaching. She told me, literally, she looked in my face, she was like, no one cares about how much you know. Be really simple. I've heard sermons over and over again. Let me give you some practical advice. Just keep it simple and connect it to life so we don't all doze off. I'm like, all right, thanks, Mom. But in my head, I was like, don't worry because I'm a simple man. I don't think that deep anyways. And truth be told, I fell asleep and zoned out in so many sermons in my lifetime. I get it. Even now, just the conference that I was at about 2 weeks ago, Pastor Tom and Pastor Rob, the other pastors at the other Grace Point, they were taking pictures of me knocking out during the conference. I was like, yeah, old habits die hard. Luckily for me, you guys are very, very good. You guys stay awake. So I want to thank you for giving me your ears every week. But all jokes aside, it often takes more intelligence and study to be simple in our teachings. It often takes more knowledge of something to apply it effectively to life and connect it to life without losing deep content. And Jesus is the most intelligent person when connecting his truths to life. But even when I was writing out this introduction about parables, I began to laugh because I also recognize how annoying parables can kind of be. I mean, as easy as they are to understand, sometimes they're like, what the heck is he talking about? I mean, it's like one of those old kung fu movies where like the Grand Master like says something about a grasshopper and an ant or some weird, weird animal and tells a story, and then the student's looking at him like, what am I supposed to do with that? And he's like, go figure it out, And, if it's easy, you get it and you receive it. But if you don't and you don't have that much life experiences, you're kind of wondering what the heck is going on. And we see the disciples time and time again at this position where they're like, Jesus, what's going on? At other times they feel rebuked. At other times they're challenged. But other times they're like, what's going on? My old pastor at my previous church would do this type of thing in our staff meetings. He would start off our staff meeting telling a story. And I remember one time he was just like, when I was young, a pastor, it was really hard times, but I didn't complain and worked really hard. And then he would quote Jesus saying, let those who have ears hear. And I'm like sitting there like, is he speaking to me? Like, I think he just talked to me. But he would do this all the time. And it's funny because sometimes you could actually know who he's talking to, like, he's definitely talking about that staff member. And then you're like, everyone's up. But the weird thing is, it's always that staff member that doesn't think it's them and they think it's somebody else. And I always wonder, is that me then? But this is how parables kind of worked. Parables function, simple stories given to a hearing ear. But if the ear is ignorant or doesn't want it, it's not received. But these are how parables work. If you get it, you get it. If you hear it, you're blessed by it. But if you don't, nothing happens. In today's parable of the sower, it's almost like an introductory parable to all the other parables. Even in the middle of our text, we skipped a little bit of a chunk. I just didn't want to read through it. It was kind of long. But it's basically an introduction to parables where Jesus says this. He basically says, some will have hearing ears and will be blessed, while others will not have hearing ears. And even if blessings are shoved to them, they can't receive it. They can't receive it. And the analogy is used for God's message all throughout Scripture to be a seed. God's word is a seed. The gospel is a seed. Jesus Christ is a seed. It's truth for life, or truth that brings new life. And if you really think about Jesus' story, his on earth, his life on earth, his cross, his death, his resurrection, the story in and of itself is a real life, true story parable that God is telling us, where we're called to really understand the point of it, the spiritual truth that it points to. And those that get this seed and those that understand it receive eternal life, receive new life. But those that don't have hearing ears, even if the blessing is given to them, it's useless for their souls. I want to ask you guys, do you guys have hearing hearts ready to receive God's saving word? Because this whole message is not really about the seeds. It's not really even really about the sower, but it's about, are we ready? Are we soils that are ready to receive God's word? I mean, this is not just once a week on Sunday, but this is every day in your quiet times. Are you receiving it? I hope that these parables that we'll learn over the next several weeks will bring life to your souls and that we'll be teachable and moldable to it. The more and more I realize how true it is that God's blessings are available to those who are listening and that are teachable. The hearts of humility, those that have broken and contrite hearts, that understand that they're sinners and are ready to receive grace. Even Matthew chapter 5, verse 3 says this, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. A poor spirit is nothing other than a hungry spirit, a humble spirit, ready to hear God's word. Today's parable, I'm blessed or lucked out. I don't like to use the word lucky because, I'm a Presbyterian anyways. No one gets that. But in that, Jesus actually takes the time to explain this parable out. He doesn't really do this for a lot of other parables. This is probably one of the only ones. And he actually explains it. It made my life easier. I was like, I get it. I can preach it. Good. But here in our text, we see that Jesus talks about 4 different types of soils. 4 different types of soils. Meaning, when we look at these 4 soils, I think it really points to the state of our hearts, ready to receive God's word. 4 different types of soil. One way to interpret these different types of soils is to think like, some will come to faith and some won't. Some will receive the gospel and some won't. That's just basically a story about that. Or we can think about these soils as different seasons of our life where we're able to receive God's word, or sometimes we reject it, or it doesn't really move us. I mean, our hearts fluctuate all the time, isn't it true? Where we could be really fertile soils at one point, be on fire for God, love Him and live for Him. In another season of life, it feels more rocky or thorny, where nothing is motivating us. Like we hear the word, but it doesn't mean anything to us. We feel dry and we lack motivation. You know, I saw my own life in this trajectory as well. My faith has gone through so many different soils. My heart has gone through so many different changes. I mean, God knows that I had my battles and I run away from Him time and time again. But guys, I want you guys to know this. Faith is not just a one-moment event where you've received God's word and that's it, and then case closed. No, it's a process. It's a process. Sanctification is a process. Growing with Christ is a process where once a seed is planted into our heart, it grows as we maintain it and care for it. We are all still in process. I mean, this is how a real relationship with Christ works. A real relationship that grows organically. It's not a formula. It's growth of a seed. It's not a badge on our uniform to show that we passed the test, but it's a relationship that grows and is molded and shaped over time. I don't think it's a coincidence that the word seed is used to describe God's word working in our life. Sometimes it sprouts quickly, sometimes it takes a while, but it's all about where the seed is planted. As we explore through this parable, we're going to analyze different seasons or different soils and various difficulties that come along with it. And hopefully through the sermon, you're able to track where you are and you can turn back to God's grace again and receive it. The first soil is what I call the hardened heart, or the seed that was thrown on the path. Let me read this passage to you guys. This is verse 4 and also 19. And as he sowed, some seeds fell along the path, and the birds came and devoured them. Verse 19 says this, he explains it. When anyone hears the word of the kingdom and does not understand it, the evil one comes and snatches away what has been sown in his heart. And this is what was sown along the path. See, back in the day, in ancient times in Palestine, people would walk everywhere, or they would ride on animals everywhere, and oftentimes they would have to travel through different fields. Now, you know, as you can imagine, if you're traveling down a road or down a route, at first it's just kind of like, you know, messed up field things or pressed down grass, but after over and over again and thousands of travels, that little area becomes what, like flattened down, beaten down, where the sun is scorching on it, and it's almost as hard as concrete. And what would sometimes happen is when the farmers are out spreading their seeds, some would come along the path and fall on it. Obviously, sometimes it would be dirt and the seed would try to struggle to grow, but ultimately the ground would be too hard and strong for anything to be able to penetrate. And Jesus here uses this analogy to talk about hardened soil, something that nothing can penetrate. I believe it's describing a kind of a calloused heart that has been worn down and beaten down. See, the message of Christ always has to hit home deeply. It doesn't just stay in our mind. It hits our heart. But a lot of times, we have this distance or this calloused heart for multiple different reasons. One, I know a lot of people that have been stomped on by the world so much that they don't have room in their hearts to trust anyone anymore. No promises. They don't care about any news or beliefs or even any God for that matter. It all sounds like fairy tales or false hopes. Different past hurts have calloused them in a way where they don't have any room anymore. It's hardened. They don't want to listen anymore. My heart really goes out to these types of people. I mean, the world is a hard place that we're trampled on all the time. I pray that God may soften your heart. But there's another type of hardness that comes along. And this is simply people that are calloused by apathy, where you find yourself listening to God's word. Maybe if you grew up in church, you hear sermons after sermons every week, the guy's saying the same thing, and dude's all passionate up here, kind of like me, and like, oh, love God, and you're just going like, what the heck is it? Why is he so passionate? You know, he says the same thing every week. He keeps doing it, and you keep listening, and you're like, I don't know if I care. And you're sitting there worshiping, and you look at the person next to you during the song, and they got their hands up, tears are kind of shedding. They're like, what the heck is going on? And you're like, I don't feel this. These are sometimes symptoms of a hardened heart, where the word is scattered, but the heart doesn't care. It can't understand the urgency of the message anymore. It's not received anymore. It just kind of bounces off. And a lot of times when the hearts are hardened, this is like a perfect opportunity where Satan comes in and snatches whatever you could have received, snatches and whispers in your ears, different types of doubts. There are also those that are callous because of so-called intellectual matters. They have a set belief system in their heads, a worldview that they already believe in, and they can't understand why people why people would even believe in a God. Some people say they can't believe in a God because they are scientifically minded or because of reason, not understanding that they're holding on to a faith system themselves that have hardened their hearts to receive anything new. Let me ask you guys, is your heart here? I know my heart's been here plenty of times in my own life. Or even as a preacher, I'm not even moved by what I'm saying. I'm just like, what am I doing every week? Speaking to people. There's people that fall asleep in here too. I know it. I see it all the time. But Ezekiel 36:26 says this, I will give you a new heart and a new spirit I will put within you, and I will remove the heart of stone from your flesh and give you a heart of flesh. May we pray for more fertile grounds in our hearts that God may soften it. But there's a second type of soil. This is what we call the shallow soil or the rocky soil. Let me read this to you guys, verse 5 and 6 and also 20 and 21. Other seeds fell along the rocky ground where they did not have much soil, and immediately they sprang up, since they had no depth to soil. But when the sun rose, they were scorched, and since they had no root, they withered away. Jesus explains this in verse 20. As for what was sown on rocky ground, this is the one who hears the word and immediately receives it with joy, yet he has no root in himself, but endures for a while. And when tribulation or persecution arises on account of the word, immediately he falls away. Usually when we read this, we're thinking about rocky soil, like, man, there's a bunch of pebbles in it or something like that. And we're like, yo, why didn't you just plow it all out? I mean, rocky soil. What we kind of don't understand is when they said rocky soil back in the day, it's not that type of soil, but it's a different type of soil. I mean, the sower would go through with this plow, he would take out all the rocks. But sometimes there was a layer of rock that the plow wouldn't reach that would be kind of beneath the soil that even sometimes a farmer wouldn't even be able to see. And he doesn't even know that it's there until he sees the fruit of what's going on in his crop. So what would happen is this. Seeds will be scattered on this soil. And as the seed is growing out, it's taking in nutrients as it's growing out, and the roots are kind of pushing down towards the ground. It would dig, and then it would hit rock. And it has nowhere to go. All that energy has nowhere to go, so it sprouts back up. So what the farmer sees, he sees the seed growing really quick, and he was like, yo, I'm going to have an awesome harvest this year. It's on. But right when the sun comes out and the sun is scorching on that seed, all the area that it's planted in, it all gets dried out. The roots haven't gone to a place where moisture and nutrients are able to be sustainable, and it suddenly dies out. You know, I once knew a girl from a mission trip that I went in a long time ago, one of my first mission trips, and she was the type of person that was always motivated, loved everybody. You know, the ones that was like the almost like the mascot of the group, oh guys, we gotta love the kids, and like Paul, stop doing that, like you gotta love the kids, and I'm like a new kid, and I'm like, all right, fine, Miss Holy, and she'd be, oh, we gotta pray, and we all get in a circle, and she'll be like, and after the mission trip, she would be the one that would make care packages for everybody. You're like, dang, like, I actually still have it, like, dang, this is pretty nice. I met her about 5 years later after the mission trip, and this is when I was praying about going into seminary, and I met up randomly, and I was talking about it. I was talking to her. I was like, yeah, I'm praying about going to seminary, and she looked at me. She was like, you take all that seriously still? And I'm like, whoa. You're the reason why I'm here, And then, anyways, and then she began to talk. She was like, yo, Paul, I left the church a while ago because I really liked the guy, and no one at church supported me. I prayed to God about it and asked him that I might be able to date this guy, but it didn't happen. So I left the church and never came back. And I was like, that's the reason why you left. But this is what happens when a relationship is not beyond the surface level. It's kind of like people who jump into the marriage and they have dreams of, the horse and carriage and Prince Charming that will hold their hands forever and cook food for them and do all these beautiful things. And they'll have a life happily ever after. And then they get married and they realize he's just sitting on the couch and he's not going to do anything. And then once you realize, like, oh, man, your whole world shatters and you're like, this is not what love is. This can't be. And you leave the relationship. But this is the reality of what relationships are. It always comes with commitment, a deeper understanding of what love is, where you got to do more than that. At times, a shallow heart only understands half of the gospel and not the full one. there's different ways that a shallow heart can come in multiple different forms. One is there's a subtle prosperity gospel that lives in everybody. I'm going to say everybody. It lives in everybody, at least just a little bit. At least just a little bit. Where we hear different sayings that people say, if you come to God and you're faithful to Him, your life will be awesome. Everything's going to go well. You're going to go into this life, and if you just pray a little bit better, things will be good. If your devotional life is on T, then blessings will just pour into your life. They say you'll be rich or successful because God loves them. And then when failures come, they lose faith. When hardships come, they say God is not something that I should hold on to. We blame God for hardships and suffering in our life. We say it's unfair. You know, the crazy thing is this happens to pastors all the time. Inside of pastors' hearts, we have this little belief that if we go into seminary and give all that we have to God, that somehow He's going to throw a lot of blessings onto our life. We're going to do awesome ministries and be fulfilled the rest of our lives. Guys, 80% of seminary students don't stay in the ministry. It's a true fact. A lot of us leave because we face different hardships. The thing is, God never promises us a good and successful life, but what He does promise is an eternal life. A life of true joy if we focus on if we focus just on Him, not the external things. But there's a second thing, kind of like the cousin of this type of prosperity gospel, the genie in a bottle type of gospel. You guys probably heard it, right? Our entire faith lies on how many prayer requests have been answered by God. If we pray to God and it's answered, you're like, yo, amen. Holy is God. Thou art mighty. And you know, we'll start singing like in the shower, like, God, you are so good. And then when something bad happens, you're like, yo, this is all bull crap, yo. It's all fairy tales. I don't know what's going on. And then you know, another prayer request can answer. It's like, God, I knew you were there the whole time. And then you kind of go back and forth over and over again. Faith is built on this idea of what God gives us. The one thing we have to realize is that we exist to serve God. It's not the other way around where God exists to serve us. Therefore, He gives us what is best for His purposes, not ours, and that's not always good things for us. The shallow heart or the rocky soil have a partial understanding of the gospel, and that they often only see Jesus as Savior, but not as Lord. So they hear what they want, they get excited for what they want, but they have no real roots, where if God stops giving them what they want, suddenly they feel dry. They're like, oh, I don't know if I feel His presence anymore. A lot of times it goes into all emotionalism as well, where people are only with God if they feel it, rather than holding on to truth. Those that are here in this soil, we have to dig deeper in our knowledge of God and who He really is, and really commit to Him, because we know that the walk of faith is not always rainbows and butterflies, but it's beautiful because of the struggle, not because of the lack of it. And the prize is not immediate, but it's eternal. Lastly, the seed that fell amongst the thorn and the weeds. Let me read this, verse 7 and also 22. Other seeds fell amongst the thorns, and the thorns grew up and choked them. Jesus later explains in verse 22, He says this, as for what was sown amongst thorns, this is the one who hears the word, but the cares of the world and the deceitfulness of riches choke the word, and it proves unfaithful. What we got to kind of realize is that thorns are a type of weed. These days, I guess I'm getting old. I'm starting to weed. I take out weeds. It actually bothers me when I see it amongst the beautiful grass. I see the weed. I'm like, yo, I got to take that out. You know, sometimes I'm like in my Sunday thing, and I'm walking out, and I grab it, and I start like picking at it. My wife's like, yo, what the heck are you doing? I'm like, yo, let me just take that one out. But if you guys don't know, like if you guys never been weeding, you probably wouldn't know. But if you don't take it out at the roots, it comes back again. And sometimes you think you did a really good job. Like you take out everything, and you think it's all good. I think this is what farmers did. They plowed everything. They thought they got all the weeds out. But it's the roots that are on the bottom that are still there. And oftentimes when, you know, the water in the harvest season, when they think it's all good, those roots actually grow out stronger. The weeds, the thorns, they grow out stronger. And the thing is, when seeds grow out stronger, they grow out faster and stronger. They suck out all the nutrients that was there for their original seed. They suck out all the nutrients and suck out everything. And even if that little seed started to grow, the weed with its big branches and the big leaves would cover the sun so that they wouldn't grow properly. And not only that, you know, the roots would get all tangled up and choke the plant. Now, this illustration is so spot on because as I'm reading this, I can automatically start thinking, like, I bet all of you guys are like, dang, I got some weeds in my life. Like, I know it. And you can see it. Like, I was thinking the same thing. Like, man, I see my weeds already. I don't like this one. And this is what we call a divided heart. These are people who understand the gospel. They actually like it. They like the message. They want to grow. They want to live up to it, but they can't let go of their lifestyles. They can't let go of the things that they're holding on to. And I feel like the thorns are probably one of the biggest things in our generation that we can't let go of. We love the gospel message. I really think that if you put the gospel message on a platform in its pure form and you bring it out to the world, they're going to be like, dang, that's beautiful. I really do believe that. But the thing for Christians, it's not about the message. It's like, man, I don't want to let go of other things. We are people that say the gospel gives eternal life, and it's something that everyone should have. But we don't want to invest in it. We'll spend thousands of dollars on luxuries, but won't give $1 to missions or a few hours of our time to serve another. Our careers are just a little bit more important. Getting money is just a little bit more important. The education of our children is just a little more important. Our comfort and entertainment is just a little more important. We say that God is our Lord and our Master, but worshiping and honoring Him is the last of our priorities. You know, as I was reading this, man, I started getting offended, you know, because I'm like, man, as a pastor, I think like this too. I'm like, oh, I don't like this. You know, at a conference I was at, pastors from all around the world were together, like literally all around the nation, and we're all gathered around, and they started talking about the different issues that are rising in the church. And the number one issue that was brought in front of the church, they said, yo, no one cares about the Sunday service anymore. No one. It's the last on everybody's priority. And it's like, yo, you don't understand. Like, right when sports season comes in, half the congregation is gone. Literally. And they're like, yo, like, people have job interviews. Everything's on Sunday now. Like, no one comes to Sunday service anymore. And then there was a few other guys that came. These were guys from other countries, other pastors. And they're, like, listening to our story. They're like, wow, America's gone a long way. And I'm like, it's like, we don't have that problem. I was like, really? I was like, man. And they were... But, you know, when they were judging us, they weren't judging just the congregation, they were judging the pastors too. And I was like, man, like, all right, holy guy, holy thou art. But I realized a divided heart can't grow because it's tangled with so many other priorities in life that is deeply rooted in. And guys, these are so hard to pull out. And they're hard. This divided heart can't grow. They will come up over and over again. But let me ask you guys, what soil are you? What soil are you? You know, as I was hitting on this last point and like reading on it, I'm like, what the heck is good soil? Let me read this to you guys. Verse 8 and also 23. And other seeds fell on good soil and produced grain, some 100-fold, some 60, some 30. He who has ears, let him hear. And then verse 23 says this, as for those that was sown on good soil, this is one who hears the word and understands it. He indeed bears fruit and yields, in one case 100-fold, another 60, and another 30. You know, as you can imagine, good soil is the one that hears God's word and understands it and are challenged and are teachable and who receive it Now, good soil is not how fast something grows. It's at the end of the day, you see how much fruit it produces at the end of the day. And you know, as I read this, it dawned on me that good soil is never permanently good soil. Good soil is soil that is constantly worked on. I mean, if you guys, I was doing some research on this, like on land and stuff like that, and they said back in the day when they had farming lands, they would farm on it for about 7 years, and after about 7 years, you would have to stop farming on it because all the nutrients would be sucked out. So what they would do, they have to just let the land sit there for a long time and just let the nutrients come back in. But then the Indians taught the Puritans something cool. They're like, what you got to do is stick some fish in there, fertilize it. And suddenly, after a few months, they could do it on again, and they learned something new. Good soil is nothing other than something that is constantly worked on. Guys, when I was younger, my grandmother had a garden in the backyard of our house in Upper Darby, and every year she would ask me to plow the ground, and I would lift it up, take it up, and you know, try to do a good method. You're in elementary school. I probably sucked at it now that I think about it. But as I would do this, she would tell me, hey, in order to fertilize this, she would be like, hey, Paul, every time you have to pee or poop, go back there and do it. So you can imagine elementary kid just walking up there. I'm like peeing in there, like pooping in there. Tom grew up with me. I don't know if he ever did it with me, but maybe. I don't know. But I really believe this is what maintaining our soils are for growth in our faith. Let me say this again. It's not that we can grow on our own without God. That's not what I'm saying. We need the work of Jesus Christ and the Holy Spirit in our heart that gives us the miracle of growth. But God also gives us a gift that he's calling us to steward and to take care of. God is calling us. Jesus is the ultimate sower who is responsible for the seed, and our hearts are the soil. But Christ also calls us to be co-laborers of his kingdom. And I think this comes in two ways. One, he calls us to be sowers to spread the seeds. And then we're going to see the different soils that are out there. But in another sense, he's saying, be the sower that not only spreads the seed, but be the sower that works on the soil, taking out the roots time and time again, going out there, giving water when needed, making sure everything got sun, taking the seeds off of the path and putting it back on good soil. He's saying we are co-workers in this. Guys, let me ask you, God's word has been given to you. The gospel has been given to you. Salvation has been offered to you. What will you do with it? Is your heart hardened? Is your heart shallow? Is your heart divided? This is not a judgment call. This is something that we all go through in different moments of our life, different seasons of our life. And let me ask you, what will you do for good soil? Are you placing yourself in an environment where the Holy Spirit can work in you? Are you crying out to the sower to help you when you can't do it on your own? I want to encourage you. We must fertilize our soil by placing ourselves in an environment to grow. We have to listen to his word and read it. Spend time with God in prayer and meditation. Come before him. You know what I do sometimes when I feel my soul being empty? I grab my guitar and just start singing by myself. If that doesn't work for you guys, you can do it a cappella or play like K-Love or something and sing with it. It does. Works for your soul. We have to fellowship with brothers and share our lives. We have to come to worship and listen to sermons just to get a little bit. We grow when we're in an environment that our souls can be used to grow and be used for his kingdom. And that's all we're called to do. Faith comes through hearing. And we need to learn how to open up our ears to hear his word and to receive it. But the thing about God's kingdom is this, guys. It will never be forced upon you. Speaking never is forced upon you. That's why it's displayed and described in a small seed or simply good news. It's not something that demands, but it's something that seeks a willing ear. Tim Keller in one of his sermons was so insightful. He said this: earthly leaders almost always are great at getting a hearing, but the kingdom of God comes to people who are good at giving a hearing. And he talks about it saying, hey, man, God's kingdom is different. It doesn't come forcefully. It's not a boulder that comes and smashes into the ground, making all these noise and trying to make a huge dent in the world. But it comes in a seed, where at first it seems like it's weak. At first we don't even see the growth when we're receiving it. But after a long time, little seeds grow into gardens. They change the ground. They cultivate it. They make forests. And they create produce. It changes the ground, reorienting everything and making life-giving processes here and there. But this is what the gospel message does to us. Every time we take in a little, it plants a seed inside of our hearts and it grows. Each moment that you hear of Christ's humility, his death for us, it does something. Each time we talk about how the way up is actually down, when we humble ourselves, God brings us back up. It changes a part of our character. Each time we hear about the gospel, how much we are loved by him and how much he has done for us, even though we are sinners, it gives us grace. Helps us experience grace where we can give it to others. Guys, will you let that gospel seed be formed inside of you? It's a slow process of being formed into God's image, but this is the only way to experience true life-changing things in our hearts. Let us pray. Dear God, I thank you so much just for giving us the gift of the seed in your Son, Jesus Christ. Lord, I thank you for your life, death, and resurrection that becomes a parable in our lives that we see and feel your love through. Dear God, I pray that you may give each and every one of us soils that are fertile, Lord. I pray, Lord, that you may take out the boulders that are in there, O Lord. May you take out the thorns, O Lord. And may you pull us off the hard path and soften our hearts. Lord, may we be able to be moldable by your words, O Lord. And may we experience the true blessings of being formed into your image. Lord, may you be with the different families in this room, O Lord. that may have come with different hardened hearts, or maybe even are experiencing different things in their life, deaths in the family, oh Lord, or even hardships of family members being sick at the moment. Dear God, I pray that your hands may be upon those families, oh Lord. I pray that time and time again they can look up to your grace, oh Lord, and trust in you and walk with you, oh Lord. That even though days might seem a little dark, oh Lord, that, Lord, that you have great promises of light that will overcome any darkness. And Lord, I pray that you may sustain them and hold them there. Thank you so much for everything that you do, O Lord. In Jesus' name we pray.